Welcome to The Alignment Show, featuring conversations with folks who have taken steps to identify their highest values and align their lives around them. Time on this earth is not unlimited, and you may be seeking to make sure you spend your time on things that matter to you. These conversations will encourage you and support you in doing so. Now, let's meet this week's guest on The Alignment Show. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time it is in your part of the world. Welcome once again to The Alignment Show. I am your host, Don King, and it's my privilege to have these conversations with people who are living their values to value their lives. That's an encouragement to you to do the same. This week, I want to remind you that Medium Well, the second book in the Sparklight Chronicles, is out. And so what do we want to do here? Let's put a little crawl up here. If you would be interested in finding out more about Medium Well, then you can go to donking.com/Medium Well. It's a great story that carries principles for living. We also want to mention what amounts to a sponsor for our show. Our guest today comes from the Go Giver Success Alliance. That is where we met. That's where so many of our guests come from, although not exclusively. It's just a great community. And so I would encourage you to check out gogiversuccessalliance.com and learn more about that program centered around Bob Berg and John David Mann's book, The Go Giver, and the principles therein. So as I mentioned, I met our guest today through that program. Let me tell you a little bit about her background. Brenda Yoho worked in education for over 2 decades. And whenever I hear of folks who have put in that kind of service, I want to say, like we do to our military service people, thank you for your service. She began as a teaching assistant. She held positions of teacher, assistant principal, and director of educational support programs at a district level. Brenda also has helped several state level and community board positions of leadership, has held those positions. And so she says of herself, "My life has been a series of events and situations which many would say, no, that could not have happened, and you still be able to accomplish what you are accomplishing." And that's a lot of the reason that we wanted to have her on today. So she's got a new book out, Lead with 2 Rules. We'll find out about those rules. But let's go ahead right now and bring on Brenda Yoho. Brenda, thank you for being here on The Alignment Show.
Oh, thanks, Don. It's always a great time to talk with you.
Well, and it's a pleasure to have these conversations with all of our guests, but I've been looking forward to getting you on here to learn more about that background and what has led to the book. I've got a copy of the book right here, if I can get the light off of it there. So we'll be talking more about that. But I'm intrigued, and I think our audience members will be as well. That whole thing about the series of events and situations. There's been so many things that you have survived. Let's go ahead with that just a little bit before we look into what led you into the education route that you've gone in. What are some of those situations that you have faced that just make people go, wow?
Yeah, you wouldn't believe some of them. It's like, are you telling a lie or telling the truth? So I think that used to be a game show. I appreciate that you mentioned the military, because that's where my husband and I started our lives together. Well, I guess we'll go back to high school. I married my high school sweetheart at the young age of 19, and we are still married 39 years long.
Oh, wow.
So we started our journey in the military, the United States Navy, and brought us back to our hometown because his father was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he had lost his brother in the Army, and it was a lot of trauma. And then he lost his brother in the Air Force, and so we started our early marriage with a lot of trauma, and our trauma didn't stop there. So just personally, myself, the things that I overcame, going back to my childhood, my parents were not educated. So I had a brother that's 16 years older than me and a sister that's 17 years older than me. So I often tell them I was a gift from God to help them all. And then I developed, coming back after the birth of our first child, our only child, I developed Crohn's disease, which prevented me from being able to have more children. And then continuing on in my journey of things to overcome, I was struck by lightning. I have been an overcomer of breast cancer. I was hit by a semi in a car that I was traveling in the back seat with my daughter being the driver. And I can actually show you a picture of the car. And my granddaughter was in the seat next to me at the young age of 2. And I can't imagine what my daughter went through as she was trapped in the car. And her daughter wasn't making any noise, and I wasn't either. And all she could see was blood. And I was airlifted, and my granddaughter had no injuries whatsoever. My best friend was in the front seat. She had a broken wrist, and my daughter had some surgeries. But my traumatic brain injury was the biggest injury. And of course, I lost the majority of my teeth as well. So that was a big hurdle to overcome. But, one of the things that you need to choose in life is if you're going to be a victim or an overcomer. And I've always chosen to use the things that happen to me in life as an opportunity to overcome. And I think that is so important, because the things that we go through that God provides to us are opportunities for us to help others on their own journey.
I have heard it said, I think it was Maya Angelou, although I'm not certain of my source, who said God doesn't waste pain.
No, you're right. Absolutely. He doesn't. And she happens to be one of my favorite authors. I love a lot of the things that she has to say. He doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't waste. He does not.
Well, you have certainly been able to use your experiences to help other people. Part of that is leading to this book that we'll talk more about, but let's dig into the education journey a little bit. You mentioned that your parents were not educated, and a lot of times I will hear from educators, again, for folks who aren't as well versed in our program, the Alignment Show, you may not know that I have spent 40 years teaching at a college level. And my parents were similarly not highly educated. My dad always supported me in education, partly because he didn't finish 10th grade. So I'm wondering if that was part of what led you into education in order to make that kind of difference to other people.
Well, I'm sure, yes, it was part of that. In the beginning of my book, I write a story about a 3rd grade girl who experiences death for the very first time. And that little girl is me. My mom received a phone call that her mother, and most of my family came from Kentucky. My brother and sister were born in Kentucky. I was the only one that was born in Illinois, because my father followed a pipeline up to Illinois and then took a position at General Motors, a good paying job. So we were middle class, and definitely, everything looked great with our family. We were doing fine because he had a good paying job. We traveled to Kentucky to go see my mother's mother. And back in that time period, she was in a hospital room, and there were definitely rules that you couldn't have children go in, but because she was dying, they let me go in. And she had a what I say is a big tent over her, which was an oxygen tent.
Mm-hmm.
And she was all shriveled up in that bed. And my grandmother, I can remember, was a very large woman, and she reached out her hand. It was so bony and cold, and she wanted to touch me, and I touched her, and it was just scary for me. And my dad quickly got me out of the room so that I could say goodbye to her. And that held with me for a long time. And just watching the funeral and watching my mom cry, and I never seen my mom cry really before like that. Then when I got back, I had to go back to school. Well, as an educator, Dawn, you know that if you miss content for an extended period of time, you're going to miss some concepts, especially in math. So I took a math test and I failed it. And the instructions were to take the test home and have your parents sign it and bring it back. Well, my mom and dad both knew how to write their names, but my mom really practiced her name. And they had high regards for teachers, and they really pushed education on all three of us. So my mom wrote her name, but she didn't like how it looked the first time she wrote it. So she erased it. She wrote it again, still not liking the way it looked. She erased it again. I said, Mom, please, you just got to write it. I have to walk to school. I'll be late. So she finally was satisfied, wrote it, and I took it. And I was a very shy girl growing up. And so there was lots of kids around the desk. And so I just laid the paper on the teacher's desk. She saw it. I'm walking back to my desk, and she says, Brenda, this looks like you signed this test and not your mom. And I'm shaking my head. No, I didn't sign it. And she's like, out to the hallway. And so I'm going out to the hallway, and everybody is looking at me. And so in that day, we didn't have telephones in classrooms. So she gets the teacher next door. She tells her all this stuff. Now, all those kids are looking at me too, because now that teacher has to watch both rooms. And lucky for me, my older sister was at home, and she took the phone call, because my biggest worry was that my mom was going to be embarrassed. And I didn't want to hurt my mom, because she had just lost her mom. And my sister came to school, and she talked with the teacher, and my sister ended up taking me home. That teacher never said anything else to me about that whole situation, never apologized or anything. And I didn't feel good about school, and I didn't feel safe after that. So I progressed through school, and I started, I had bullies, and I saw other people being bullied. And it wasn't until I got to high school that I found some teachers who really took an interest in me and started making me feel a little bit better about things. And of course, my church family always made me feel good. So I had that as a support system in my home. So I wasn't missing out necessarily. I had two sources at my home and my church family that helped me get through things. But when I got those teachers at the high school, I really started to come out and, grow. But I missed out on those elementary and junior high years with having that at school.
Yeah. I could see where that kind of experience would lead you to want to be a certain kind of teacher when you got there. Still, a lot of us have had, I guess we would say, similar experiences. Obviously, the specifics are going to be different, but having experience with the education system, and then we don't go into education because we want to make a change there. What led you to go ahead and aim for becoming a teacher? I mean, was it, let's put it another way, how early did you decide you wanted to be a teacher yourself?
Wasn't until later. And this is where God comes in. So my minister really, I think he knew early on I needed to be a teacher, because he put me in charge of Sunday school when I was younger and in charge of a youth director. And I thought he was a little crazy about all of that, but I did it. And then, like I said, we were in the United States Navy. So I moved away for a period of time, and then I came back. Well, when I graduated, I couldn't get married until I graduated from college. So I graduated from a junior college and got an associate's degree. And my teachers at college worked really, really hard to make sure that I had the skills and things that I needed to be able to work on a military base. But the problem was that we were making a lot of money. So I didn't get to put those skills into place because we could only afford one car. And so I started babysitting for other people, that I could make some side money. But anyway, what made me go to be a teacher was this. I came back home and I started working in the medical field where I had been trained to be a secretary, receptionist, office manager. And there was some conflicts in that building. I was in my hometown, which surprised me because it was my hometown. But there was a lady that thought that she should have gotten the office position. And so I got a phone call that said, "Hey, do you want to come and be a teaching assistant?" It was a cut and pay, but I thought, I'm miserable where I am. And so I said, sure. And I went and I loved it. And so then I went back to school and got my teaching degree. And then I still loved it. And I still felt like, my principal at that time was letting me do all kinds of things. And we had a tragedy that happened in our area. I don't know. It's been in the news. I think there's been a documentary that's done with it. I live in an area where Jessica Roach was abducted on her bicycle, and it was less than a mile from my house.
Wow!
And it terrified me, and I wanted to do something about that, and so I just continued to keep climbing because I had people telling me, you need to do more, you need to do more. And so I just continued to do so. And I continued to build programs to help kids because I really did not want kids to not feel good and to not feel safe. And everything that I have done my whole career has always been about making sure kids feel good and feel safe.
That's basically the two rules. I think when your book lead with two rules, those are the two rules. What I want to probe into a little bit at this point, you could have remained as a teacher your entire career, following those two rules. Working with the kids that were in your classroom. I'm going to make a comparison here. The president of our college, Pellissippi State Community College, Knoxville, Tennessee, Dr. Wise began as an adjunct instructor and of history, and then became a full-time instructor. When he was wrestling with, should I move into leadership? He became a department head and vice president, all that kind of thing. He was very much aware that, okay, this is a whole different kind of work. I'm sure you wrestled with similar kind of stuff. What was it that led you to think, if these are my two rules? Side question here: were you already aware of those two rules when you made the decision to move into administration?
Yep, I had been practicing them.
Okay,
yep, and yep.
So you were conscious of those rules already. What was it that led you to say, I can carry out these rules more effectively through administration rather than staying in the classroom?
Because you can reach more. I felt like I was limiting myself with just the kids in my classroom. Because here's why, Don. It was because that original principal that hired me as a teaching assistant, and I just want to throw this out too. The superintendent at that time in that district had also been my high school principal. They both allowed me as a teaching assistant to create programs for an entire school that was about these things that I'm talking about, feeling good and feeling safe. And because of all their support in letting me do this at a school level, I knew that I'd already had a taste of that, and I knew how it impacted kids. So when I went to my classroom, I saw how it was really impacting kids in a classroom, that I knew that I could do more. And one thing that's not in my book, and one story that really impacted me as a high school student, was my journalism class. I was in a class I was just a few freshmen in the class, and there was some juniors and sophomores. The man teaching the class he was next door neighbors with one of the boys in the class. He found him hung one morning. He killed himself.
Oh my.
And I remember him coming to class and talking about that. And I saw the pain and in his face and and the love he had in his heart for the kids. And I saw the kids that I knew who had been saying mean things to him. That really impacted me and had a huge impact on what I think that stayed with me enough that I reflected on that a lot when I was teaching, when I was assistant principal, all the way up to director of education. One of my other teachers was one of my English class. I dedicated part of the book to him. He had us make a list of goals that we wanted to accomplish in life. And of course, being the person that I am, I wanted to achieve all of those things. So keep in mind, high school senior, so you have a different kind of mindset. So the first goal on my list was to marry my high school sweetheart. Check, I did it. The second one was to graduate from college. Yeah, check, I did it 3 times. Once wasn't enough. I did it 3 times. The last one that I had was to write a book. And really, the other one was to get a doctorate's degree. And I started working on that. But I don't think that it's necessary for me to do that. Mm-hmm. Because I think titles don't define who you are. Your actions define who you are.
Yes.
So I'm not going to worry about that degree.
There's this thing called death by degrees. So at some point you realize that if it helps your goal, great. If it doesn't, then there are other ways to achieve that goal.
Yeah.
Okay. So what would you say in all of those positions, all those, because you went from assistant principal to principal, and most principals that I know, which I don't know all that many, but most of them will serve in more than one school. Were you in the same school, or did you have different assignments?
Yeah, there's a funny story about that too. Mm-hmm. So I was hired as an assistant principal in my hometown. Okay, so I served as an assistant principal at a junior high, and I helped to transform that into a middle school. And I was there for 4 years. And then I went to a large unit district, and I was hired as an elementary principal. I absolutely loved that, Dawn. It was a great position. I loved it. And I was only able to stay there for 1 year. And that is because another principal within the district had left at the last minute. And the superintendent who hired me, she had spent like 4 years trying to recruit me to come. And in our conversation at the interview, she said she promised she would not move me, but she had to break her promise and move me. Well, you have to do that sometimes because of situations, I think.
Yeah.
And so she moved me to a middle school. And so all of a sudden, I'm at the there's less than, I think, like a week, before school even starts. I'm the principal of the middle school with an assistant principal and a dean of students and 602 students. And I was like, wow, I just, whew. I want to use my 2 rules, but I've never used it with that many kids before. And this was a very diverse group, and they were a very challenging group because their background in this school was they had fights all the time. There were several different gangs involvement, and I mean, it just wasn't looking good. And see, the school that I was hired for, it was like a very small elementary building, one of their brand new schools, and I mean, it was a nice looking school. So people thought I did something wrong and was demoted to go to that school. And I'm like, well, I didn't do anything wrong. So I'm like, but I went in and did exactly the same thing that I've always done, and it worked beautifully. And it was fine. The teachers were amazing, and it took a little bit for them to kind of figure out the quirky me, but it worked out beautifully. And it didn't take long for us to beat out the other middle school in the district. They had the gifted program, and they were the favored middle school. We were like the have-nots of the district. We soon became the haves because we beat them out in academics, and our attendance rate went way up, and our discipline went way down. So it worked. The kids really fell into learning the 2 rules and building trusting relationships and taking responsibility for their choices. That's the whole point of the Lead with 2 Rules, is that, we've in the past, we've done this with education. There's new shiny things, we're going to try it. Here's this shiny thing, we're going to try it. For the past, I'm going to say for the past couple of decades, we've been doing the reward system with kids. Oh, you pushed in your chair, here's a lollipop. Or, you didn't do this, oh, here you go. Whatever they're doing, when they naturally should be doing those things. So the whole thing is about teaching them, when you have a problem, how do you find the solution? And so it's about questioning. So that's the first thing I teach them. So this is how 2 Rules works. I walked down that very first day with those 602 kids. I asked the teachers to leave. Oh my gosh, Dawn, nobody moved. They looked at me and I said, teachers, seriously, it's okay. Take a 10-minute break. I want you to go. Finally, somebody was brave enough to stand up, and then they started trickling out. And I said, I just want to talk to the kids. And so then I showed the kids how I was going to start conversations with them in the jump. So I raised my hand all the way up, and I had made eye contact with kids to do the same thing. And then pretty soon everybody had their hands in the air. And I said, now you're all quiet. You've got your hands in the air and your eyes are on me. And this is a signal. When you see everybody else raising their hands, then you know Mrs. Yoho is ready to talk. And your eyes are on me. I'm going to lower my hand, and we're going to begin a conversation. We don't start conversations with yelling at each other. See, I trust you, and I want you to earn your trust. That's what we're going to be doing for the next few weeks, because you need a trusted adult within this building to help you with problem solving. But I just want to tell you, I only have 2 rules. And they all looked at me the same way the teachers did. And I said, the 2 rules are this. Everybody who walks through the door of our school is going to feel good about being here, and they're going to feel safe. Now, let me tell you how you're going to help with making that happen. See, we all have choices, and we make choices every day for the rest of our lives. And with the choices that we make, we have responsibilities and consequences with those. So before you say anything, ask yourself, is this going to make me feel good? Is this going to make me feel safe? Is this going to make others feel good and feel safe?
Mhm.
If your answer to any of your questions is no, you've identified a problem in need of a solution. That's when you need to find a trusted adult to help you with figuring out the best solution. They looked at me, puzzled. I said, I'm going to give you an example. If I choose to get in my car and speed, go faster than the speed limit, and the police pulls me over, I may get a ticket. I chose to break the speed limit. Also, there's a possibility I could hit someone, injure someone. The worst thing, I could kill someone or myself. Consequences to our choices. We never know what they may be, but we know what the rules are. Because all the rules in our handbook and all the rules in our life are all about helping to make us feel good and feel safe. We have to choose to make it a great day or not. The choice is always ours. That's basically my speech. And when the kids come to me with a problem, if they've been sent out with a teacher, I always ask them, were you part of the problem or the solution? And I wait for them to tell me so they can work through it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now this makes a lot of sense. Now, one thing that I want to observe here, and just making the tie, I could see some people outside of education saying, well, this sounds like social engineering, or whatever. You're just supposed to be teaching them to read and write and all that sort of thing. But I hear you saying that following these rules had the effect of academic achievement.
Yes.
And you did this in more than one school. Later on, as director of, I forget the official term, but you were working at a district level to spread these ideas.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it had the same impact in a district.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you observe? This is a complicated question, Brenda, but I think there's a simple answer to it. Let me take a step back for just a second. It has been over 20 years now since a law, an initiative, I'm not quite sure which to put it, but under the Bush administration, No Child Left Untested, it's called No Child Left Behind, but those of us in college called it No Child Left Untested. And I can tell you that in my college teaching stuff, I have seen a negative impact of children who have not been taught creative thinking because the teachers had to teach to the test. You were accomplishing this during that time. So to me, it says that following these two rules counter the negative effects of No Child Left Untested. Is that saying too much? Is that where this academic achievement comes from? Learning to be more effective human beings leads to the academic achievement. What do you think?
Yeah, because what you're going to do let's look at society. Society is a reflection of what we've allowed to happen over this period of time. And you hit a soapbox thing for me.
I'm sure.
You did. Part of my role as the director of educational support, I was in charge of all the grants. So I wrote for grant money. That's how our system in education is funded, is through those federal grants. So it's political. Education has always been political, and I don't like that. No Child Left Behind. What politician is going to vote against that? Because in a political campaign, this Congress person doesn't support No Child Left Behind. They want to leave your children behind. How about the new one? Every student succeeds. Well, yes, we want every student to succeed. But when you see the gaps in education, is that when No Child Left Behind, there was punitive consequences for schools who didn't reach the goals with reading and math. Then you started getting sanctions. Then you started getting, this and that. No school district wanted to have that. So then you start cutting back on the other subject areas, and focusing more on the reading and math. That's why there's so many gaps in history and so much of, and that's why kids are not having the skills that we expect them to have. Mm-hmm. When you're simply doing what I just described with the 2 rules, you're helping kids to learn how to self-regulate. Now let's look at society right now. If you kind of watch things, and I'm not saying watching it on TV, don't watch it on TV. I'm saying in life for real, if you're out and about, do you see people really self-regulating themselves? Like the people honking the horns and the people cutting in lines and people griping about this and griping about that. I don't see a lot of self-regulation. That's because we fail to do that. This process helps them to self-regulate. The next thing, self-awareness. When we get control of our emotions, we are no longer going to start reacting to situations. We are going to start responding with thought. And that's what we need. Right now, we're seeing a lot of reacting to things because we have failed to start learning how to, like what you just said about the critical thinking, responding with critical thinking. So that's a big thing. Social awareness. We're missing out with helping kids to understand that everybody is different. We look different. We talk different. Just within the United States, we all look different. We talk different. We have different cultures and backgrounds. Nobody knew that my parents didn't know how to read, write, any of that stuff, do math. My dad was pretty good at math though. But until you get to know the person's story, everybody has a story. And we're missing out on having the opportunities to do that. I'm a firm believer in support systems. Home, school, and community needs to work together to solve this problem together, because we created it together. Why not solve it together?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to tie in. I don't think you'll disagree with this, although you're free to do so, of course. But it's been my observation that the word educate comes from the word educe, which means to draw forth from. Now, we tend to think of education as a putting into. You kids, you sit there while I tell you stuff. You hold on to it long enough to throw it back up on a test. And that's not education. Information may be the tool of education. But if we're drawing forth from, then it's a good question. What are we drawing forth? And what I hear you describing is we're drawing forth abilities and capabilities, becoming a more effectively functioning human being.
Yes.
So what I hear of these 2 rules is a very practical way of achieving that. And what you're talking about is drawing forth something. The reading and the math and all that's important, but even those are simply tools. And so I just appreciate your message so much. Now, at this point, correct me if I'm wrong, you have retired from those positions. You're working full time now with your writing and your consulting, helping teachers and districts and all that sort of thing to apply these principles. Am I right about that?
Yeah, you're right. I'm coaching with Illinois Principals Association, some of the principals, and I put stuff out there for free, Don. Every Wednesday I post something, and then I do a little video on Saturdays. I want people just to reach out to me, and I will help them. It is about making a difference for me. It's not about making any kind of money. I don't live in a fancy home. I don't care. It's about giving to kids. Kids are important to me. Families are important to me. Communities are important to me. I want to make sure that we're getting better together. And, you just said exactly what one of my quotes is. Education is something that we do with children, not to them. Yeah. And we've got to really get back to that. One of the things I also believe in is that children should be the leaders of their education. I firmly believe that kids should be able to have those parent-teacher conferences. They should be leading them, not the teachers. The teachers can be there to answer any questions the parents have, but students should be confident enough to say, hey, mom, dad, here is where I'm at. These are the skills that I know really well. Here's my strength. Here are the things I need a little bit more help on. Here's the things that I'm trying to do. Here are the goals I have. Because that's important for them to know, because they know what they're interested in. They know what they want to do and where they want to go in regards to getting all these skills. We just need to show them what they're expected to be able to do at this grade level and let them work on it and let them see where they want to go and be. We're getting hung up on all these other things that are noisy. These technology devices are taking up a lot of their time. I talk about bullying a lot. I've worked with Dorothy Espelage, who is globally known as a bully expert. She's one of my friends. She endorsed my book. I know how to talk with kids. And if you need help with talking with kids, I can help you with that. Just message me. I can give you a couple of ideas. We've got to get rid of these devices, because when I was a kid, the bullying stopped when I got home. See, they weren't in my house, but now they're in your house with these devices. And, you know, Don, it's broken my heart to see the suicide rates of our youth as young as 10 to 17. It's way too high.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, I want to be sure that people have the ability to connect with you to follow up on this. For folks who are on with us visually, I've got a QR code, as we often do, for Brenda's website. And so you could just shoot that on the screen. And let's see if I can go over here. I've also got the website. Oh, yeah, here we are. I've got it in text form also, so we can say that out loud really easily for the audio folks. BrendaYoho.com. So Yoho is like Yoo-hoo, but there's only one O in each of those portions. YOHO. BrendaYoho.com. And then we also want to share, if I can swap out the QR code, we've got, it looks the same, but the QR code is different. This is Brenda on LinkedIn, which is a really good way to connect. And let's swap that out here. Brenda on LinkedIn. We got all kinds of text on the screen now. Those of you who are audio only, you can just go to LinkedIn and look for Brenda Yoho. I don't think there's too many out there on LinkedIn. Are you aware of other Brenda Yohos?
I don't know. There could be some out there. I don't know. But, you know, I always tell the kids, Yoho is like a pirate. Yo ho ho.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. And when I think about my days in elementary, I always told the kids that Yoho is like ho ho. We connect. So I'm watching, seeing who's naughty or nice. So
okay. Lots of ways to make it memorable, and that's very good. So these are ways that you can reach out. In fact, she has even shared her email, and I'll put that on the screen. Say it out loud. It is YohoBren, that's YoHoBren at gmail.com. For a lot of us, I guess for these kids, the email is old technology, but it's still the best way for us to get in touch.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage listeners, audience members, viewers, you know, if you're not in education yourself, you know somebody who is, dealing with the frustrations that often come. We're running short of time here, Brenda, so I don't want to open up too much of another can of worms here. But one of the things that I'm aware of, and you will be able to comment on more expertly, I know that the average tenure, I don't mean tenure in the technical term, but how long somebody's been in the job. the average tenure of teachers has dropped drastically in recent years, which tells me that experienced teachers are getting frustrated and they're retiring, they're resigning. I saw a figure, I don't know how accurate it is, that the average teacher had only been in the position for less than 2 years. Now, that may or may not be accurate, but I know it's gone way down. So does this, whether it's accurate or not, does this fit what you know about what's happening with education?
Yeah, you're spot on, Don. There's, we have teacher shortages. So people are leaving. I have several people that I know that's retired early. I just want to make it clear. I retired because of my brain injury and because of a situation that happened with the changing of a superintendent. So it became impossible for me to do what was needed. Um, it's heartbreaking because I think that what's going to happen is that we're going to, if we don't get things turned around, we're going to lose some good quality people. And then what? If it's not you that's going to help us make this change, then I don't know who. Because my book is good for parents, it's good for community members, it's good for teachers and for principals. It's simple, it's easy to implement, and I'm willing to help any. But we do need everybody to help us with making this impact and making this change. Everything will get better. And one of the things I always say is be the solution daily, because we need you.
Absolutely.
And we can together do it.
Okay, so folks, just so that, especially those of you who are on visually, but we'll have the links in the show notes for folks who are audio only. Let me show you a couple of screens here. First of all, here is Brenda's book so that you can recognize the cover. Lead with 2 rules. Let's get it up there a little bigger. Yes, there we are. So that's out there in the wild, available on Amazon. Brenda's website is a good place to get some support, and I would encourage you, whether you're in education or not, share these resources with the educators that I know, and these folks need this kind of support. And then Brenda on LinkedIn. You guys know I'm real partial to LinkedIn. It's a great way to find people who work in the areas that you want to know about. It's not just a resume site. So those are some resources that will help you to make a difference in your community, and Brenda will help you with that. Mm-hmm. So Brenda, we seems like every week I go overtime because we just have such fascinating conversations. So we are unfortunately need to close out, but I want to thank you for being here with us, and thank you for the impact that you are continuing to have on our culture.
Thank you, Don. Great show. Thank you.
Thank you. And just hang around in the green room for a second so I can thank you properly. I want to tell people about what's coming up next week. So once again, here on the Alignment Show, let's change the ticker a little bit. A little reminder about that latest book of mine that's coming out. You can find out more, that has come out. You can find out more about it at donking.com. That's Don with a double N, DONNKING.com/medium well. And next week will be a solo show. I will be my own guest, so to speak. We're going to dig a little bit more into the ideas and the principles of the Sparklight Chronicles. That is looking at both of the books in the series, The Way of the 3-Year-Old Why and Medium Well, what they might mean for you. And so we'll be looking forward to that next week. We have a lot more guests lined up. I think I've got guests lined up through June. We're just having great conversations, and I hope that you will mark 10 a.m. on Fridays. If that's not a good time for you, which it's not for a lot of people, got to be at work and all that sort of thing, we always have the show notes. We have the replays available at, I really should show that one too, shouldn't I? That is confidencecultivators.com. That'll be showing up here on the crawl here in just a moment. Confidencecultivators.com will always take you to something useful connected with the show. In any case, we are here to help you live your values and value your life. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week on The Alignment Show. That's it for this week's episode of The Alignment Show. What has it inspired you to do in your own life? Whatever it is, take action now and take the first step. It will help you to talk with a friend about what you're thinking. Share confidencecultivators.com to spread the goodness. And remember to live your values and value your life. We will see you next week on The Alignment Show.